I guess that the part of what the market had been trying to figure out is if rate cuts were, sort of bullish because things were normalizing or bearish because things were going bad. And so this is sort of in the bad column. But I tend to think that there's sort of an initial reaction where the market is trying to figure that out. And then they remember they're getting a rate cut either way. And then they get happy again. The scrutiny, there will always be scrutiny on Tether. It is simply too big to not be constantly scrutinized, right? Every office and every potential, regulator and enforcement division is going to be constantly looking at this company. It's just massive. And it's so getting to be more and more systemically important. So that's sort of inevitable. In an election cycle where crypto has absolutely and undeniably become a major issue, where we had a candidate from one of the major parties, lauding Bitcoiners in the Satoshi white paper, Bitcoin white paper day yesterday on Halloween, where crypto political forces have meaningfully swayed, primary elections up and down the ballot, and where Bitcoin is sitting at, above 70,000 for the longest period that it has, as it's seeing record inflows for an ETF that's largely driven by institutional buyers.
Bitcoin is trapped in a holding pattern just below $70,000, but this week could change everything. With jaw-dropping $250 million inflows into BlackRock's ETF and the fate of the crypto market hinging on the upcoming US election, Nathaniel Whittemore reveals why this is a make-or-break moment for Bitcoin. Will it surge to new heights, or is a crash imminent? You won't want to miss this explosive discussion on the factors that could make or break your crypto investments.
To be honest, it does feel like the type of thing where, so we're seeing an immediate market reaction down, but it kind of feels like pretty inevitably when the market sort of like takes a step back, I think that they're going to come to that exact same conclusion that you are, that, any question of whether there was going to be sort of like a pause might be out for this cycle, so I don't know. I guess that the, part of what the market had been trying to figure out is if rate cuts were, sort of bullish because things were normalizing or bearish because things were going bad. And so this is sort of, in the bad column. But I tend to think that, there's sort of an initial reaction where the market is trying to figure that out, and then they remember they're getting a rate cut either way, and then they get happy again. This is sort of like the closest we've ever had to being able to make a new all-time high on Bitcoin white paper day, and we just couldn't get it done. I mean, I feel like some whale should have taken one for the team, just sort of mass smashed the bid button and gotten it done. But, we are now officially ahead of, or the longest period of time at which, Bitcoin has been above 70,000, which is, it's kind of the type of moment where you so anticipate, wanting to get above that it's that consolation prize of this sort of being in totally uncharted territory kind of goes out the window. It is weird though. I mean, plenty of people have commented on the divergence between the price and the sort of sentiment. As much as people feel, but also sort of not as much in the sense that it will be highly consequential. We've seen with this administration how much sort of, a White House's disposition towards the asset, whether it's direct or whether it's by verge of allowing someone else to control their disposition towards it, can impact policy. At the same time, I think that post-election, we will sort of remember that it's going to be fine in either case. It's just how fine it is and how much we have to deal with on the, along the way. At some point, the eyes get so large that even the free marketers go like, do we really want him buying all that much? But for now, I think that if you're really looking at it, you're looking at price support for as far as the eye can see at this stage. So, it's super ambitious. I think, he is abundantly clear about it. What was really interesting about this earnings call where they were discussing the strategy is Saylor threw down the gauntlet. It was very clear that it was no longer a sort of justifying how they think about things. It was about challenge, basically a sort of denial that anyone could catch up to them without going all in, right? He basically said at one point during the call, like, other people are going to get interested in this. There's no way they can actually copy us without going all in, and no one can go as all in as we can go right now because of, we didn't start here. We had to sort of grow this, and it was very interesting just how different the sort of the conversation was. In fact, more broadly, one of the things that I noticed doing shows this week is I had a full ass show about earnings calls related to crypto. There was Robinhood, Coinbase, MicroStrategy, and a couple of others. And, obviously we kind of know all these things in the abstract, but the fact that there was a full, kind of days, full show's worth of news about earnings calls from the public markets that relate specifically to crypto is sort of just a reminder of just how different things are. Whereas with Coinbase, Coinbase has always been a tale of two revenue streams. One is trading and the other is everything else. And so, Coinbase's trading revenue was down over the last quarter because it was just quiet quiet, right? We all felt it. We had to make up a bunch of stuff. Like luckily, Trump and Kamala were here for us, making sure that we had something to talk about every week this summer, but it was quiet, right? It is even this year, I think, has felt disproportionately quiet even relative to price. And so the Coinbase has for years now been really clear that everything in that company, the long term, is about diversifying those revenue streams. Like that's what they focus on. It's base, it's custody, it's all of these things. And, they're showing, if you kind of take a step out from quarterly results, they're absolutely showing progress on those things. But, trading is still king. It's still driving, a big portion of the revenue. So, I think that your assessment is right, that this was still an extremely sort of healthy performance, just didn't quite get at expectations. But I think expectations were, I don't know, one of the things that it's interesting about expectations is I think crypto companies are we're still in a period where Wall Street analysts aren't that good at understanding what's going on in markets. And so it makes it hard for them to, kind of get expectations right when it comes to trading because they're not sort of familiar with those dynamics. And my guess is that will get better over time.
Nathaniel Whittemore reveals why Bitcoin's price has stalled at $70,000 despite record inflows into BlackRock's ETF. The upcoming 2024 U.S. presidential election is critical, as 16% of voters are factoring candidates' crypto stances into their decisions, potentially shaking up market dynamics. Could this be the spark needed for the next rally? Additionally, he discusses the increasing regulatory scrutiny on Tether, which could impact the entire crypto landscape. Don't miss Whittemore's insights on how these factors will shape Bitcoin's future and how you can navigate this volatile market.
Yeah. I mean, listen, so one, I think you're right. Like at this size and at every size that it hits from now on, the scrutiny, there will always be scrutiny on Tether. It is simply too big to not be constantly scrutinized, right? Every office and every potential, regulator and enforcement division is going to be constantly looking at this company. It's just massive and it's so getting to be more and more systemically important. So that's sort of inevitable. What's interesting about this story is, is sort of the question of there's a few different scenarios that this could be. One is, there is a pipeline between the DOJ and sort of major news outlets that we've seen before that use press leaks effectively as tactics to try to kind of exert pressure. I think the place that we saw this most, and this kind of resembled to me, was in the months leading up to Binance's settlement. We saw a lot of these types of leaks from privileged sources in the enforcement divisions. This is not that same pattern. It's just a single story, but it is reminiscent of that to me. At the same time, this story could be a single person inside the DOJ who has an axe to grind, who wants to throw, a tomahawk on their way out the office. Like there's a lot of reasons to also not take it all that seriously. I think that the tinfoil hat, not that tinfoily, not that hatty kind of look at this is Howard Lutnick has been getting larger and larger in the media, as Trump's transition team co-chair. And, he's a huge Tether bull because his company is custodying it. And, maybe there's some lawfare, or the sort of pre-lawfare politicking going on. Who knows? I think ultimately we should assume that with where Tether sits, and I have to assume that Tether knows this, and they've given all the indications that they are operating as such. They are now officially sort of too big to operate kind of fully outside the system. They're clearly still focused on providing services for, outside the US and the global South, but they've also spent the last 3 years not ceding the official US stablecoin story to USDC. There could have been a moment where in 2021, 2022, Tether kind of just said, like, you know what, Circle, you get the US, we'll take everything else. But they haven't. They talk all the time about how much they work with the FBI and all, so I would assume that whatever amount of scrutiny there is, Tether is taking it head on and using their considerable war chest to make sure that they are out ahead of it. Basically, the argument of the piece is that regulation by enforcement is what's available to them because judges keep letting them do it. So that's, they're incentivized to kind of take that path, which kind of lays the blame at the feet of Congress for not giving the SEC more resources. But at the same time, it's pretty clear that there's not a lot of compassion for the idea that, the SEC says come in and register and then doesn't allow people to come in and work with them. So I think, if you were a totally objective outsider just reading this, probably what you'd come away with is thinking, boy, all that looks messy. There's clearly not a hero on the Gensler side. Maybe I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think it's a particularly positive look for Gensler or this SEC in their approach. Where they tend to lose me is when they kind of try to construct questions that that are about single issueness. It's very hard for me to believe that actually 5% of Americans are single issue crypto voters. I don't think there's very few issues that have 5% of Americans as single issue voters around that thing. It almost doesn't matter, because that's so incidental to the fact that there is no way to read these polls and what has happened in this election cycle and not see crypto having emerged fully as a meaningful political force, an issue that, speaks specifically to a lot of people, as well as being resonant with a lot of other related issues. Crypto is here on the ballot box, on the agenda, whether people are voting exclusively on their crypto beliefs or just as a part of a thing. It's not ignorable in any meaningful way. And, more than any polling, the candidate posture has demonstrated that. But I think where we kind of just ended is a pretty good reflection of, what the last 3 to 6 months have taught us in terms of the crypto story. Here we are in an election cycle where crypto has absolutely and undeniably become a major issue, where we had a candidate from one of the major parties, lauding Bitcoiners in the Satoshi white paper, Bitcoin white paper day yesterday on Halloween, where crypto political forces have meaningfully swayed, primary elections up and down the ballot, and where Bitcoin is sitting at, above 70,000 for the longest period that it has, as it's seeing record inflows for an ETF that's largely driven by institutional buyers. If you need a picture of where things are right now and how different it is, it's a pretty good snapshot.
As we've explored, the stakes are incredibly high for Bitcoin in the coming weeks. With pivotal factors like the presidential election, institutional strategies, and regulatory scrutiny all playing a role, the next few days could determine the future trajectory of the crypto market. If you found value in this discussion, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more insights, and share this video with your fellow crypto enthusiasts. Stay tuned for the latest updates and prepare yourself for what could be a game-changing moment for Bitcoin. Remember, knowledge is your greatest asset in this evolving landscape.